Okay, I'm going to start this morning by just welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap. Welcome to all of you guys here at Wat Sung Yu. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online. This is the first day of a 5-day course, which is titled Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment. This is where you're going to learn all the foundational teachings that you need in order to develop a life practice to help you get to enlightenment. We're going to be talking about enlightenment today, about what it is. We're going to spend a lot of time making sure you understand what it is. But just in general, to get you started, it's a mental state where your mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're no longer experiencing any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. We're going to go into this in a lot more detail when we get going in our course today. But just to help you guys understand a bit about what this course is about, is helping you to get the foundational teachings that you need to firmly get on the path to enlightenment and start training your mind to eliminate these discontent feelings. These teachings are coming from the Buddha, or we refer to him as Gotama Buddha for some people. There's various ways to refer to him. This is an individual who lived over 2,500 years ago, and today we can learn his teachings and you can get to this enlightened mental state. We're going to be talking about his life story here in a bit. But what I'm going to do to get you guys started is just share something that I share with pretty much every brand new student when they first start learning with me, is that the way you get to this enlightened mental state is by learning the teachings, investigating them, examining them. You reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false, and then you practice them in order to train your mind and uproot certain pollutions in the mind. You can't get to enlightenment through belief. The teachings of the Buddha aren't about believing a bunch of things and then hope something good happens when you die. That's not the way that you can get to enlightenment. You need to be able to get to wisdom. By getting to wisdom, you can navigate the world making wise decisions that's going to produce wholesome results. But when you lack wisdom, you're going to tend to make unwise decisions that produces unwholesome results. So the teachings of the Buddha is not about believe, and hope something good happens when you die. It's about learning now, reflecting now, and practicing now, and therefore you get to see the results now in this life. You'll see your mind becoming more and more peaceful, more and more joyful as you're getting closer and closer to enlightenment. And eventually, by the time you get to enlightenment, it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You haven't been angry, you haven't been frustrated, you haven't even had the slightest annoyance in the mind by the time you get to the enlightened mental state. So the way that you can do that is through awakening to the wisdom that the Buddha taught and helped guide you to this enlightened mental state. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment, what this means is acquiring wisdom. And you can't acquire wisdom through belief, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it, or maybe you convinced yourself to believe it. So with belief, you don't know what's true or false, so therefore you're not going to be able to get to wisdom. So as you're learning the teachings, you're independently verifying them and practicing them, you get to the point where you've acquired wisdom about these natural laws of existence that the Buddha taught. His teachings are timeless. The teachings that he taught 2,500 years ago, they're not based in any kind of cultural aspects or anything like this. He's describing the natural laws of existence, and these natural laws of existence are the same natural laws that existed during his lifetime as they are now. So this is why his teachings are just as applicable today as they were back then. He's teaching you how to train your mind. He's teaching you how to navigate the world. The Buddha didn't teach how the world should be. He didn't teach a bunch of rules or commandments, and this is the way the world should be. And if everybody follows those rules and commandments, the world becomes peaceful. That's not what he actually did. What he did is he described how the world is. And by understanding how the world is through these natural laws of existence, then with that wisdom, you'll navigate the world more readily. Because when your mind's angry and sad and frustrated and experiencing all these discontent feelings, it feels like a real struggle. It's really difficult when you're experiencing those kinds of feelings. This is the indication to you that your mind hasn't yet cultivated the full wisdom about this world that you live in, because it's struggling, it's having difficulties, it's feeling stress or anxiety or some other discontent feeling. So awakening to these natural laws of existence that are around you and affecting you, whether you're aware of them or not, will help you to navigate the world more readily, and you won't struggle. You won't have difficulties. Your life can be at ease, but you need to gradually train, gradually practice, and gradually experience progress. It's not instantaneous that enlightenment comes. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you're awakening to these natural laws of existence through acquiring wisdom. You've done essentially the same thing with another natural law that you may not even be aware that you did this. If you think back to when you were a child, you didn't understand the natural law of gravity. None of us did. And it affected us whether we were aware of this natural law or not. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbow, we broke open our knee, we broke toys. We had all kinds of difficulties and struggles with this natural law of gravity because we lacked wisdom. So we made unwise decisions that produced unwholesome results. Slowly but surely, we saw the truth for ourselves, and we started gradually training, gradually practicing, and gradually experiencing progress, where we started looking at the surface of the street or the sidewalk. We started tying our shoes a bit tighter. We started making wiser decisions about this natural law of gravity because we had wisdom that we didn't have before. So therefore, with that wisdom, making wiser decisions, it produced wholesome results, to the point where now we can ride a bicycle, we can climb a ladder, we can get on airplanes, travel all over the world, because we fully awoke to the wisdom of the natural law of gravity. So now we make wiser decisions and we no longer struggle with this natural law. But when we lacked wisdom, we made unwise decisions that produced unwholesome results. That's why we fell down. That's why we hit our elbows. And that's why we hit our head and broke our toys, because we were making unwise decisions related to this natural law. And it was affecting us whether we were aware of it or not. But by the time we were 10 or 12 or 14, we had fully awoke to this natural law. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around. We started tying our shoes and looking at the surface of the sidewalk. We started making wiser decisions. Even me, to this point, I make the wise decision to put this glass of water behind me. Not because somebody told me to do this, but just with a wisdom, you're going to naturally make wiser decisions. Because if I put this glass of water in front of me here, I'm going to more naturally probably knock it over and spill it. And you know, because of the natural law of gravity, that that's unwise. So I choose to put this glass of water behind me, not because someone told me to do it, not because it's a rule or it's a commandment, but just because I have the wisdom of the natural law of gravity, and I know that that's unwise to put the glass of water there. So you'll naturally make wiser decisions when you understand the natural laws. The natural law of gravity is a good example of this. But the natural laws that the Buddha taught, the average human being is unaware of these. They're unawakened to them. They don't have the wisdom of these natural laws. They lack wisdom. And then when you lack that wisdom, you're going to make unwise decisions that produce unwholesome results. But what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're choosing to get wisdom. You're your own independent practitioner. You're actively working towards enlightenment with a teacher serving as a guide. I'm kind of like a tour guide, pointing out to you the things that you're going to need to learn along the path so that you can gain the wisdom that you need in order to fully awaken to these natural laws that the Buddha taught. So everything you're learning on the path to enlightenment, whether it's from me or anybody else, you should never believe anything related to the teachings of the Buddha. Don't believe the books that I write. Don't believe the things that I say. Don't believe anything, because belief, you don't know what's true or false. You will never hear me nor the Buddha in his teachings say anything about belief in terms of just believe me, just believe me, just believe me. That's not what the Buddha said. It's actually just the opposite. It's come investigate the teachings, come examine them, come learn them. And when you intellectually understand them, then you can start reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or false through your own direct experience. Then you can start practicing the teachings, and you'll be able to see the truth for yourself, that your mind's becoming more peaceful and more joyful. I'm going to show you how to do this as we walk through the course. There's various times where I'm going to be teaching you to help you intellectually learn. I'm going to be showing you how to reflect in order to independently verify the teachings, and then I'm going to show you how to practice the teachings. And then if you take these teachings from this course and you integrate them into your life, you're going to see that not only is your mind going to become more peaceful and more joyful, but your life is going to become even more peaceful and more joyful, because your relationships, personally or professionally, can really blossom. Because oftentimes in the unenlightened state, there might be a certain amount of bitterness or hostility or animosity or resentfulness in some of the relationships that you have. You might find that you're irritated or annoyed in some of those relationships. You might feel that you become agitated, or you might argue with certain people. And because of this, it's difficult to have harmonious relationships with everyone around you. But through awakening to the wisdom that the Buddha shares, you can get to a point where all your relationships are at ease and you don't struggle and have difficulties in the world. You'll have certain challenges that you'll face, but you'll be able to apply the wisdom of these natural laws and you'll be able to overcome any challenge that you're facing. Right now, sometimes people feel like they have problems in their life or difficulties or struggles in the unenlightened state. But with the wisdom, you'll have challenges, but you'll be able to apply the wisdom and easily overcome whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So as I teach you, as I guide you on the path, whether it's just this course or beyond this course, don't ever believe anything that I say. It's important to get to wisdom where you can see the truth. You, in my opinion, you aren't a devotee, you're not a follower or anything like that. Instead, you're your own independent practitioner looking to acquire wisdom on this journey. And a teacher is like a tour guide pointing out to you the things to learn and the things to understand, but you're doing the work to be able to learn and understand and ask questions and get clarification. Because as I teach you this week, there's going to be things that are different from what your current understanding is about the world. It may even be different than what you've learned in other places. If you've learned about the teachings of the Buddha in other books or temples or various teachers, you might find that what I share with you is very different than what you've learned in other places potentially, depending on what your exposure has been, depending on what you've learned. But anytime you see me presenting something or sharing something that you're not quite clear on, or it differs from what you currently understand, just ask me questions and I'll help you to understand how to independently verify what it is that I'm sharing with you. Because everything that I share is based on the original teachings of the Buddha. I've confirmed everything that I share in 4 different ways. What I teach is in the original Pali Canon. This is the original source teachings of the Buddha. Then I never believed the Pali Canon. I practiced it for myself. I learned it, I reflected on it, and I practiced it, and I see the effect that it had to the mind. Then I've been sharing these teachings with countless people over the years, and they are saying the same thing, that it's helping their mind, helping their life as well. And then the 4th way that I've confirmed things is every now and again when Thai people find out that I'm teaching these teachings, they'll ask me, what are you teaching for meditation? Or what are you teaching for the Four Noble Truths? Or what are you teaching for this? And I'll share it with them. And they'll say, oh, I was just at a temple last week for two weeks learning with this monk. And everybody knows that this monk is enlightened in the community. And you're teaching the same things that he's teaching. And you're just teaching it in English and he's teaching it in Thai. And so this is the way that I've confirmed everything that I share in 4 different ways. Is it in the Pali Canon? I confirmed it for myself and my own practice. Students for many years now are learning it and experiencing improvement. And Thai people confirm with me that what I'm teaching is what they would consider to be the teachings of the Buddha. So me understanding that and knowing that these teachings are helpful and impactful is great. But in order for you to benefit, you've got to be able to see the truth for yourself. So if at any point I'm sharing something that you're either not sure about, you need clarification on, or it differs from what you currently understand, just ask questions and get clarification. If you're in a class where everything the teacher is talking about and teaching, you already know it and you already understand it and you already agree with it, you're in the wrong place. That teacher is not helping you at all because you already understand everything that you're learning. You're kind of wasting your time, so to speak. But if you're in a class or in a course like this, where what's being presented to you is very different than what you currently understand, and you're having to really work and apply effort and energy to learn, that's a really good place for you because you're growing, right? If everything you were learning in a class like this, you already understood it, there's no growth. So what you'll find is as I go through the week, there's going to be things that you need to really step up to. You need to really walk towards to be able to learn and understand. And it's through you asking your questions that you're going to get clarification and details. So feel free to ask any and all questions as we go. Here at the temple, as you guys would like to ask questions, we have microphones in this white bowl. If you use the microphone, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and then they'll be able to hear you online as well. And if you get a microphone, you can actually keep it with you and use it throughout the day. And even the people around you might need it, so you can kind of share the microphone around. There's a gray button on the front. You just press it, and then there's lights that come on. You just wait a second or so, and you hold it up to your chin, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll hear you online. For those of you guys that are online in either Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting your questions into the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. If you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like by opening your microphone, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. So once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to our course. As you heard me share, be sure not to believe anything that you hear in any kind of book or course about the teachings of the Buddha, because you're not going to be able to believe your way to enlightenment. You need to do the work to learn and reflect and practice the teachings. And that's what's going to ultimately help you get to this enlightened mental state. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of introduce you to the course and help you understand what the course is. And then we're going to be moving into a talk where we're going to talk about the life story of Gotama Buddha. And then this morning, I'm also going to be sharing with you what is enlightenment, so you can understand more about this. And then we'll take an hour-and-a-half lunch break, and then we'll come back in the afternoon, and I'm going to teach you some more things. So let me introduce you to the course so that you understand what it is that we're going to be learning throughout the week. Again, the title of this course is Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment. This is a 30-hour course where we meet from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We usually take a mid-morning break somewhere around 10:30. We usually take a 15-20 minute break, and then we come back and learn some more. And then we take an hour-and-a-half lunch break. And we finish generally around 3 o'clock. Sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later, but generally we finish around 3 o'clock. This is contact information for me. I don't know that you need this information. All this information is on our website if you happen to need it. If you're coming to class, come to class. If you're not coming to class, that's fine too. You can join online. You can listen to the recordings. I don't take attendance, of course, to see who's here and who's not here. You don't need to report in to me about, whether you're coming to class or not. No worries about that. In terms of those of you guys that are here at the temple, just some logistical things for you. There's a bathroom in the very back of the room, the very last door on the right. You're welcome to get up and use the restroom at any time. Again, you don't need to ask for permission. You don't need to wait for a break. If you would like to use the bathroom, go use the bathroom. I will take breaks throughout the course, and if you'd like to use the bathroom at the breaks, feel free, but you can also use it at any time that you like. You guys are all making your own independent decisions. You're adults. You can come and go as you please. And then there's other bathrooms outside the classroom, whereas if you go outside the classroom and you follow the main signs around, you can go to the large bathroom that's for the entire temple. This bathroom is just here in this classroom, but there's a larger bathroom outside the classroom that you can follow the signs to. We even have water here that is provided by our students that you're welcome to drink at any time. The students provide this for you guys. So as you need water, feel free to help yourself. There's cups and different things over there to be able to help you guys keep refreshed. And you're welcome to bring snacks or food or water or drinks, whatever you'd like. You're welcome to keep yourself nourished and refreshed throughout the day. So this is some logistical information and some details about me. You're welcome to use this to contact me, whether it's during the class or after the class too, because I support students in the class, but I also support you outside of the class and outside of the course too. You're welcome to reach out and get help as you go forward in life. So just to kind of give you guys a bit of a understanding of the course, the course schedule and plan is that each morning we start at 9 a.m. and we usually do chanting and meditation. We don't do that on the first day because I'm introducing you to the course, but typically what we'll do is we'll start right at 9 a.m. doing chanting and meditation. This afternoon, I'm going to teach you the Buddhist chanting so you'll understand what that is and why an individual would be interested in doing that. And then I'm going to be teaching you meditation all the way throughout the course, and then you'll get a chance to practice it in the mornings and the afternoons as well. And then after the meditation around 9:30, I'm going to start with a talk on certain teachings. Some people refer to this as a Dhamma talk because Dhamma means teachings. So essentially it's a talk about the teachings, or the way that I think about it is as a discussion. It's not a lecture. It's not a sermon or anything like that. It's a discussion. It's me sharing teachings with you, helping you to understand. It's you asking questions and seeking clarification to understand more. We're having a discussion, and I'm sharing with you and helping you to understand the teachings of the Buddha. And we'll do that from 9:30 to 12, again, with a break somewhere in there, usually around 10:30 or so. Then we usually take a lunch somewhere around 12, sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later. This isn't hard, fast, or rigid, but we'll tend to take an hour-and-a-half lunch break. And then we'll come back somewhere around 1:30 each day before we go to lunch. I will let you guys know when we're going to restart the class so that you'll know when to come back for the class. And I take a nice hour and a half so that you guys can go take your time to get some food. If you need to go shopping or do some other things, you can go around and do that. I'll leave the temple open, this classroom open, so if you guys would like to come back here and relax or meditate or do anything you'd like to do, you're welcome to. Sometimes people come back here and take a nap after lunch. You might even see me doing that from time to time. So feel free to come back, get a bunch of cushions, lay them on the mat, lay them on the floor, and take a nap if that's what you'd like to do. It's a wonderful thing to take a nap in the middle of the day. So feel free to do that. And we'll be starting around 1:30, but I'll let you know each day as we break for lunch, what time we're going to be coming back. And then in the afternoon, I'll usually start with meditation, or I'll be teaching you about meditation and then doing meditation with you. So there's going to be some kind of focus on meditation typically in the afternoons. We're going to be learning breathing mindfulness meditation in the seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. I'm going to teach you walking meditation on Wednesday afternoon, which is a very unique style of meditation that will really help you, particularly if you have pain in your body or you have an overactive mind. Walking meditation is great for that. And then we'll generally finish around 3 o'clock, sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little bit later. And then we do that for 4 days. And then on the 5th day, Friday, I invite you guys on a field trip. If you guys would like to go on a tour, I take students over to Wat Umong, which is a forest temple, and to Wat Doi Suthep, which is a different branch of Buddhism that is up on the mountain. And what I do is I tour you through the temple and teaching you about the architecture, the artwork, and the symbolism that you will see in these temples. Because once you've studied the teachings of the Buddha for about 4 days with me, now when we go into the temple, I can start teaching you things like this symbol behind me. You may not know what this symbol actually means, but these symbols were in use during the lifetime of the Buddha in order to help you remember his teachings. So you can go into a temple with understanding of his teachings, and the temple kind of speaks to you. It kind of comes alive. It's kind of like a living library. Whereas if you don't know the teachings and you don't know what the symbolism is, you might just walk through a temple and be like, oh, that's pretty. That's beautiful. Let me take a picture of that. Let me take a picture of this. But if you understand the teachings of the Buddha and the symbolism and the artwork and the architecture, when you walk through a temple, it kind of speaks to you. It's like a living library. So I'll walk you through 2 different types of temples, teaching you the teachings of the Buddha through the artwork and architecture. That way, whenever you visit temples, no matter the temples that I take you to or any other temple in the world, you'll be able to identify the symbolism and the architecture, and the temple will really speak to you no matter where you go. So we're going to talk about this as we get closer to Friday. So probably on Thursday, I'll give you guys more details on this. You guys are welcome to come to Friday. Even if there's people that you meet during the week that haven't been here in the course, they're welcome to come to this as well. Sometimes there's lots of other people that come to this. So it'll be people from this course, but it'll also be other people that haven't even been here studying, because I let people know about this separately. So some people just come for the tour. So we'll talk about this on Thursday as we get closer to it. So you guys are welcome to join for that. It's kind of like a classroom without walls. We go into the world and I teach you in this classroom without walls. Okay? Everything that I share in this course is based on this book. Oh, sorry for you guys online. I apologize. I haven't been showing my slides. Let me get the slide showing here. There we go. Everything that I share in this course is based on this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. In this book, you can acquire it through our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can download it for free. You can take it and go print it if you like, or you can get printed copies here at the temple, or you can get them on Amazon if you have access to Amazon in your home country. This book, I'm going to be covering chapters 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 19. I'm not going to be able to cover the entire book in 5 days, but I have another program called the Group Learning Program that meets each Sunday and each Wednesday, and I do cover every single chapter in the book. And this program is actually restarting on the 17th of March from the very beginning, where I'm going to walk students through every single chapter of the book in a 7-month period. And you can join here at the temple, or you can join online because I live stream it. So you can join through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. And if you can't make the live class, it's recorded, so you can watch the recording at any point that you like. So it would be wise to have a version of this book. You can get it in PDF format, Kindle, or a print version. It's volume 1 of a 13-book series. The book series is titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. And this is the first book of that book series. It's going to lay a really strong foundation for you and help create a framework for you. Some students tell me they read this 8-12 times, and they learn something new every time they read the book. And then the rest of the book series, volumes 2 through 13, it kind of fills in this framework that you create with this first book and all the foundational programs. You kind of create this framework to understand the path to enlightenment. And then volumes 2 through 13 kind of fill that in and give you a lot more details using the original words of the Buddha. So if you acquire a version of this book, that'll be really helpful for you as you progress, not only in this course, but in your entire journey on the path to enlightenment. The topics that I'm going to be covering in this course in terms of what you're going to learn is here in a moment. I'm going to be introducing you to the life story of Gotama Buddha so that you understand who this individual is. I'm going to explain to you the history of his life and kind of what he did throughout his life, and then what we have available to us now in terms of the teachings. I'm going to explain what motivated him to actually go on this journey to enlightenment. So you're going to be learning a bit about his life story. Then after our break, I'm going to teach you guys enlightenment. What is enlightenment? I'm going to explain to you what this is, because if you're going on a certain journey, you need to know what is the target. Like if you were going to travel north to the city of Chiang Rai, before you ever decide whether you're going to go to that city or not, you'd probably ask people, what's in Chiang Rai? What's there? What kinds of things do they have, right? You would be interested to know that kind of information. And then you'd make a decision of whether or not you'd like to go to Chiang Rai or not. And then knowing a little bit about that city, you would be able to more readily navigate your way to it. And then once you're there, you will know that you're there. So the same thing is true about the mental state of enlightenment, that if you understand about what it is, you can make a decision of whether or not you're interested in getting to enlightenment or not. And then knowing what enlightenment is, you'll be able to more readily navigate your way to enlightenment and know that you're there once you've attained enlightenment. So I'm going to be teaching you about what enlightenment is and what you'll experience as one makes their way to enlightenment. Then tomorrow, I'm going to be teaching you the Four Noble Truths, establishing right view, and the Eightfold Path, the path for all humans to enlightenment. This is the very first and most fundamental teaching of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha, and everything else plugs into that Eightfold Path. So anybody who's interested in getting to enlightenment based on the teachings of the Buddha, they would need to know the Eightfold Path, inside and out, backwards and forwards, up and down, left, right. They would need to know this in detail. So I'm going to be using the original words of the Buddha to walk you through and helping you understand what the Eightfold Path is so that you can learn about it, you can reflect on it to independently verify it, and then you can practice it and see the real transformation in your life as you learn and practice his teachings. So that's going to be tomorrow. That's the real core and focal point of the course. Then on Wednesday morning, I'm going to be teaching you transforming the three poisons: craving, anger, and ignorance. This is where you're going to learn kind of the three high-level problems in the mind, or the pollutions or defilements. I'm going to explain what these things are. I'm going to explain to you the symptoms that you'll experience because of these poisons. And then I'm going to teach you how to eliminate them from the mind, because it's eliminating these three poisons or these three unwholesome roots or these three fires from the mind that's going to actually produce enlightenment. So you need to know what they are so that you can then uproot them and eliminate them out of the mind with the tools and the techniques that the Buddha taught, so that you can get to that peace and calmness, the serenity, the contentedness and joy that is the enlightened mind. Then also Wednesday morning, I'm going to be teaching you the 5 precepts, a householder's guide to daily practice. This is where you're going to learn about 5 wise decisions that if you're making decisions in this way, it's going to produce wholesome results for you. Whereas if you make unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. Some people have been taught that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, no intoxicants. The Buddha actually didn't teach that. He doesn't teach that way. That sounds like a bunch of rules, a bunch of commandments. That sounds like it's black and white. I'm going to be sharing with you the original words of the Buddha on the 5 precepts, and this is going to be much more illuminating language for you. And you can see that there's this big gray area that you need to learn how to navigate, that it's not black and white. So I'm going to introduce you and share with you and go into detail with his own words about the 5 precepts, and then I'm going to apply it to today so that you can see certain things and certain decisions that you're making today. The Buddha's 5 precepts will help you to be able to navigate those and make wise decisions related to these 5 precepts. So I'll help you guys with that on Wednesday morning. Then Thursday morning, we're going to be talking about what is karma and how does it affect me. Some people refer to this as karma. This is a Sanskrit word from the Sanskrit language. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, and someone who studies the original teachings of the Buddha will typically use the word karma. What this is referring to is a natural law of cause and effect, or action and result. It's a natural law that's affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. It's not mystical, it's not magical, it's not punishments and rewards. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. There's no being who's overseeing this natural law and deciding who gets what. This is the results of your decisions. It's cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's your life, your decisions, and your results. Everything the Buddha taught in one way or another comes back to this natural law. That even when you're learning the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, he's describing this natural law to you. So when I'm teaching you throughout the week, I'm going to be teaching you about this natural law of karma. But on Thursday morning, we're going to go in and talk about it in detail, specifically about the natural law itself, so that you can get more wisdom about this natural law, and then you can actually navigate the world more wisely, producing more wholesome results in your life. Then we're going to be learning about what is merit. This is a specific type of karma that you need to be able to produce in order to make your way to enlightenment. So I'm going to be teaching you about this. And then throughout the course and the various afternoon sessions, I'm going to be helping you develop a meditation practice with using breathing mindfulness meditation. You're going to be learning the seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. This afternoon, we'll do our first meditation session together, where I'll just kind of be guiding you in meditation. But at different times during the course, we're going to dive in and talk about meditation in detail, about the ins and outs, the whys, the hows, all those different things, so that you can develop a meditation practice. If you're coming to the course each day, either here at the temple or online, you're going to be able to develop a meditation practice where you're meditating at least twice a day here, because we'll be meditating in the morning and we'll be meditating in the afternoon. And if you choose to meditate in the evening yourself, you'll be meditating 3 times a day for this week, and you'll kind of see the effect that it's going to have as you develop your practice. And then what you can do is you can maintain your practice beyond the course, where it can be sustaining for you, where you can be consistently meditating over the period of your life, and you'll be able to see the improvement that the meditation creates in the mind. And then I'll be teaching you Buddhist chanting this afternoon as well. And then by the time we get to Thursday, I'm going to teach you about continued support beyond this course, because nobody here is going to get to enlightenment in 5 days. It's not possible for that to occur. So if you really would truly like to get to this enlightened mental state, you're going to need additional support. So I'm going to help you understand how to do that. And everything that I share, whether it's the books, the audiobooks, the videos, the podcasts, the classes, courses, retreats, it's all available to you at no cost. So you'll be able to get all of those things and others, like personal guidance. You can even get personal guidance, whether you're here in Thailand or you're online. You can meet with me privately, and I'll help you to apply the teachings that you're learning in these courses to your life and specific things that you're challenged with. So do you guys have any questions on the course itself or anything that I just introduced you to? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into our first talk for the course, which is the life story of Gotama Buddha. In the first volume of the book, this is chapter 19, and I titled that chapter, The Difficult Human Existence, Sickness, Aging, and Death. This is where you learn about what the life story of the Buddha is and what motivated him on this journey to enlightenment. So I'm going to teach you about his life story, and I've organized it into his birth, his early life, his journey to enlightenment, and then his teachings and what he actually taught during his life. And then I'm going to describe this sickness, aging, and death, which were real motivators for him to go on this journey to enlightenment. What I share with you here is documented in his original teachings, and there's some of it that has kind of been handed down orally from person to person to person, but nonetheless, I'll share with you what I know about the life story of the Buddha, and then as you have questions, you can go deeper and ask questions. Typically, what I will do is I will kind of talk for about 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then I'll open up to any questions that you guys have related to what it is that I'm sharing. With this particular topic, it's usually best to just kind of teach you the whole thing and then kind of at the end open up to any questions that you have. But you'll notice when I typically teach, I'll be teaching for like 15, 20, 30 minutes, then I'll open up for questions and then teach some more, open up for questions and so forth. But what I'm going to do is just teach you the whole story of the Buddha and then open up to questions at the end. So let me know what those are as you go. And again, for those of you guys online, you can ask questions as well. So this individual who we refer to today as the Buddha or Gotama Buddha, or different people refer to him different ways, he was born into a royal family as a prince. He was the firstborn son, destined to become a king. His name was Siddhartha Gotama. And he was born to a queen. And the customs at the time were that when a woman was pregnant and she was getting close to delivery, they would take her home to her homeland, and then she would deliver her baby in her homeland, because she would have her family, like her mother, her father, her brothers, her sisters, to be able to help her, to be able to, birth and raise the child. So Siddhartha Gotama's mother, who was a queen, was married to the king, and she was pregnant and she was getting close to delivery. So they organized this caravan, and they start taking her back to her homeland so that she can actually deliver the baby. And on her way back home, she starts going into labor pains where the baby starts to come out. And they stop the caravan, and she gets out of the caravan. She goes over to a tree, and she reaches up and she holds on to a branch of a tree, and the baby's starting to come out. And she's trying to get the baby out through the birthing canal. But the baby couldn't be born through the normal birthing canal, so the baby breaks through the side of the stomach. She ends up dying 7 days later. Because this was over 2,500 years ago, they didn't have the medical technology to save her life. Today, we would have just did a C-section, and she would have lived and everything would have been just fine. But during this time frame, we didn't have that medical technology, so she ends up dying 7 days later. And the protocols during this time frame was that if you died during childbirth as a woman, your siblings would adopt your children as their own. So Siddhartha Gotama's aunt became his stepmother. His mother had an older sister who adopted him to be her own child. So this was kind of normal during that time frame, because it was not uncommon for either women and or the child to die during childbirth 2,500 years ago. So his aunt becomes his stepmother because his mother dies 7 days after his birth. It's said in the original source teachings that when Siddhartha Gotama was born, that he immediately walked 7 steps and lotus flowers blossomed under his feet, and then he spoke and he said, "This will be my last life." I suspect that this is not true. I think this is an embellishment of the story. Oftentimes, as stories are handed down from person to person to person, even in written form, when there's someone who's done something as wonderful as Gotama Buddha did throughout his life, sometimes people kind of embellish the story to make him look even better than he already was. We don't need to embellish his story because he was already wonderful and he did amazing things already. But I suspect that this is actually an embellishment of the story, because if that was actually true, the next part of the story wouldn't be needed. The next part of the story is that his father, being interested to know what his son was going to become, summons advisors, kind of like fortune tellers, to come tell him what his son is going to become in life. Well, if your son is born and they start walking right away and they have lotus flowers blossoming under their feet and they can talk right away, you don't need fortune tellers to tell you what your son's going to become, because it's pretty obvious that this child's pretty special, right? So I don't think that this aspect of this miracle at the time of his birth is actually true, but it could be. I wasn't there at the time. I don't know. It is, and it's pretty much irrelevant at this point, because we have his teachings and we know what it takes to get to enlightenment. But this is a story that you will hear about the life story of the Buddha when he was born, that there was this miracle that occurred. So these advisors that come and advise his father, there's 108 of them that come and advise his father. And 107 of them tell his father that his son is going to be a great monarch. He's going to be a great leader. He's going to be a great ruler. He's going to rule over his land and expand his territory far and wide. And his father likes that. He's like, that's my boy. Yeah, all right. My son's going to be a great king. He's going to expand my territory. But then there is the one advisor who came in, the very last one, the 108th one. He comes in and he apologizes to the king. He says, "Sir, I'm so sorry to give you this news. I heard the other advisors and they are 100% true that your son is going to be a great leader, but not in the way that you think. He's not going to be a monarch and he's not going to rule over your land. He's going to be a spiritual leader." His father didn't like this. So his father decides that he's going to sequester his son into the palace. He's not going to let him go outside and get involved in worldly affairs, because he didn't want to run the risk of his son getting interested in worldly affairs and becoming a spiritual leader. Instead, he was interested in kind of wooing him into the ways of being a monarch and a ruler. So he sequesters him in the palace. He doesn't let him go outside. He gives him amazing fabrics to wear for clothing. He gives them amazing food. He gives them entertainment. He gives them beautiful women taking care of him and bathing him. He gives them all the riches and jewels that you could ever imagine that a king could provide to their son. And what he was trying to do is kind of woo him into the way of being a monarch. He felt like if he could kind of get him hooked on this life of luxury, that he would never be interested in going to be a spiritual leader. So at the age of 29, Siddhartha Gotama had been living in the palace all this time. He never went outside the palace, and he was living this life of luxury. And he was about to become the king, because during this lifetime, you would become the king when you were 30 years old, and your dad would essentially retire, and they would be right alongside of you to help you become a better and better king. And as Siddhartha Gotama was nearing age 30, at the age of 29, he realizes he's about to become the king, and he's never even been outside the palace before. How could he rule over these people and be their king if he had never even been outside the palace and saw what the kingdom was like? So without his father knowing and against his wishes, he went outside the palace, and he took with him his royal attendant. And when he went outside the palace, he had what we call the 4 observations. And what these 4 observations are that he saw a sickly person, he saw an aging person, he saw a dead corpse, and he saw a roaming ascetic, someone who had given up worldly possessions in order to find this better understanding of life, to discover what it takes to get to enlightenment. And when he went out into the palace and he saw this sickly person, he saw all this disgruntledness and these people being angry around this person that was sick. And the sick person themselves were pretty grumpy and irritable. And he needs to turn to his royal attendant and ask his royal attendant, "What's going on over there? Why are those people so irritable and grumpy?" And the royal attendant is like, "Oh, he's sick and now he can't work and he can't, acquire the food and the resources that he needs in order to sustain his life. This is why he's grumpy." This was different for Siddhartha Gotama. Siddhartha Gotama never understood that because he lived this life of luxury in the palace. He didn't understand not having the resources you needed to live life. He just kind of assumed this is the way other people live, the same way as he did. So he saw this sickly person and this irritability and this grumpiness. Then he sees this aging person. Same thing, lots of disgruntledness around this individual. And he has to turn to his royal attendant and ask him, "What's going on? Why is that person so irritable and grumpy?" He's like, "Oh, he's getting old. His bones are aching. He's feeling pains. He can't work. He can't acquire the things he needs to sustain his life. And this is why he's grumpy." So then he sees a dead corpse. And he has to ask his royal attendant, "What is that?" he didn't even know that at the end of this life that we die, because he hadn't been outside the palace. He was living this sheltered life. And his royal attendant explained to him that this is what happens to us at the end of this life. We die. And he saw the misery and the despair and the sorrow and the grief around the dead corpse from the family. And this really had an impact on Siddhartha Gautama, because he saw all this grief and misery in the kingdom. He was living this life of luxury, but when he went outside in the kingdom, he saw all this grief and misery in the world. And then he saw the fourth observation, which is an ascetic, or today we might refer to this person as a monk. This person who had kind of given up worldly life and gone into this life of homelessness, trying to understand the world, trying to understand the mind, to be able to get to the enlightened mental state. So Siddhartha Gautama had to ask his royal attendant, what is that? And then the royal attendant explained it to him. And Siddhartha Gautama decided that that's what he would like to do. He said he wasn't interested in ruling over this misery and this grief and this despair. He was interested in helping the people escape that and figure out how to escape that. So he ends up going back to the royal palace and deciding that he's going to leave and he's not going to be the king. At this time, he has a wife and he has a young infant child. And when he goes back, it's nighttime and they're sleeping. So he just kind of looks in on them and then he chooses to leave. He doesn't wake them up. He doesn't tell them what he's going to do. He doesn't kiss them goodbye or anything like that. He just leaves from the royal palace, leaving them sleeping. He understood enough that if he wake them up, if he hugged them, if he kissed them, maybe he wouldn't leave. So he decided to just kind of leave without them knowing about it. And he takes with him his favorite horse, and he takes with him his royal attendant. And he leaves out of the palace. And as he leaves out of the palace, he eventually gets to a point where he's starting to shed things. He lets his horse go, he lets his royal attendant go, and he ends up cutting off his hair. During this time frame, they would grow their hair very, very long. This is how they would know that you're a member of the royal family. Even the men, they would grow this really long, beautiful flowing hair, because it's only members of the royal family that would be able to take care of their hair, because the people who are working out in the fields or working in businesses, we would be doing labor and we would be working out in the fields, and we wouldn't be able to take care of this long flowing hair. It would get dirty, it would get knotted, it would get tangled up. We wouldn't be able to take care of this long, beautiful flowing hair. But the royal family was able to lay around. They were able to have servants take care of their hair, shampooing their hair, detangling their hair. So if you went out into the kingdom and you had this long, beautiful flowing hair, they knew you were a member of the royal family. Today, we just take the picture of the king and the queen and put it all over the kingdom, and everybody knows who the king and the queen is from the pictures and the photos. But during that time frame, 2,500 years ago, they didn't have that ability. Siddhartha Gautama was born in what we refer to as modern-day Nepal, and he taught in what we refer to as Northeast India. So in that region of the world, 2,500 years ago, there was no photographic equipment. So that's how they knew that you were a member of the royal family, is because of this long, beautiful flowing hair. So by him cutting off his hair, it's kind of like, I'm never going back, because having grown that hair for 29 years, and if he would have went back to try to assume the throne of being the king, nobody would ever believe that he was the king, because he doesn't have that long, beautiful flowing hair anymore. So he ends up shedding his hair and cutting off his hair. And this accomplishes other things for you on the path to enlightenment that you're going to learn about in this course. Not everybody has to cut off their hair in order to get to enlightenment, but there is a certain benefit in cutting off your hair, which I'll explain to you as we get talking in the course, and I'll share different things with you. So once he cuts off his hair, he goes and tries to learn how to get to enlightenment from these two different teachers that are in the area. There's different teachers teaching different things, and all these teachers were claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment, that they were claiming that they had figured out what it took to get to enlightenment. So he starts studying with this first teacher. This first teacher teaches him all kinds of things that are causing harm and pain to the physical body, because the thought was that if you could cause physical pain to the body and your mind could overcome that, then you could get to enlightenment. So this teacher teaches him to hang himself upside down from trees, to starve himself, to lay on beds of nails, to pierce his body with metal implements, and all these other things. And Siddhartha Gautama trains with this person for 1 year. And after he gets to the end of this year, the teacher comes to him and tells him that he's mastered his teachings, that now you can share my teachings. And Siddhartha Gotama realized that his mind wasn't any more peaceful than it was a year ago when he was in the palace, that these teachings hadn't led to his peace and joy in the mind. So he ends up leaving that teacher and going to study with another teacher. And now when he's studying with that teacher, they're pretty much teaching him the exact same things: starving himself, hanging himself upside down from trees, laying on beds of nails, piercing his body with metal implements. And he gets to the end of a 1-year training, and the teacher does the same thing. He comes to him and says, hey, you've mastered my teachings. You can now share my teachings as a master. And Siddhartha Gautama is frustrated with the whole thing because his mind's not any more peaceful than it was when he was in the palace. He knows that he's not enlightened because his mind is still irritated and annoyed and frustrated. So he goes off on his own. He goes into the jungle. He goes into the forest and tries to train his mind by himself. And he takes it really, really far, because the things that he was learning with those teachers, those were the only things that he actually knew how to do. So when he went into the forest, he's still continuing to do those things. He gets to the point where he's only eating 1 grain of rice per day. He's starving himself. His ribs are protruding. His stomach is sunken in. His facial bones are protruding. You might see artwork or statues depicting this time frame during his life where he was starving himself. And he takes it so far that he's kind of like on death's doorstep. He's just about ready to die. And there's this woman and this young daughter who kind of walk by, and they see that he's so emaciated and that he's, kind of shriveled up, just kind of bones and skin. And they bring him some rice and they plead with him to eat the rice, that they say, you're going to die if you don't eat this rice. And in this moment, he reluctantly accepts the rice and decides to start eating. And he realizes what we refer to as the middle way. He realizes that when he was in the palace, he was living this life of sensual pleasures where he had everything and anything under the sun that he would be interested to have. But then when he left the palace, he was doing all these disparaging and degrading things to the body, taking it to the point of eating only 1 grain of rice per day. His mind was on either side. And he realizes this middle way where he needs to bring his mind to the middle and fine tune it. And he starts to talk about it later as like a musical instrument. That if you have a musical instrument with strings and the strings are too tight and you pluck the musical instrument doesn't play beautiful music. It doesn't play the way that the instrument is intended to play. But also if the string was too loose and you pluck that, the instrument doesn't play beautiful music there either. It doesn't play the way the instrument was intended to play. And he realizes that he needs to tune it perfectly to the middle, and then the instrument plays the way it was intended to play. And he says the human mind is essentially the same way, that if you living this life of luxury and sensual pleasures, that your mind can't perform optimally. But also if you're disparaging the body and doing harmful things, then you can't live a wonderful and peaceful life there either. So you need to bring the mind to the middle. And this is what we refer to as the middle way. The Buddha taught this as part of his life. And the eightfold path that you're going to learn tomorrow is the middle way. It's training the mind to come to the middle. And that's where the peace and the joy that is a permanent mental state that you can enjoy for the rest of this life is experienced. So in this moment where he eats this rice, he realizes he needs to start eating in moderation. Where when he was in the palace, he had all the food he could ever imagine. But when he was out in the jungle, he was only eating 1 grain of rice per day. So he decides to start eating once a day. Now, again, you don't need to eat just once a day in order to get to enlightenment. You can, but it's not required. You're going to need to sustain your energy. So usually in a household life, we need to eat, 2 or 3 meals or maybe more per day. You will need to learn how to eat in moderation, where you're not eating based in emotion, but you can eat more than 1 meal a day and still get to enlightenment. But for him, he was meditating. He was, living a very sedentary life. So eating just once a day was enough for him. That was eating in moderation for him. So eating in moderation for you is going to be slightly different than that, depending on your activity level. So he starts eating just once a day, and he starts training his mind over the next 4 years. So a total of 6 years it takes him to ultimately get to enlightenment. And he knows he's gotten to enlightenment because his mind is peaceful. It's calm. It's serene. It's content with joy. He's not experiencing any irritation, any annoyance. Even the slightest displeasure or slightest ickiness is eliminated from the enlightened mind. Your mind is uplifted and radiant and bright and joyful. And he knows he's gotten to enlightenment, and he knows that he's done it by himself, which is the first criteria of what makes a Buddha, is you need to get to enlightenment by yourself. So he was able to get to enlightenment by himself, which is the first criteria of what makes a Buddha. So he decides that he goes to this tree and he spends out about 7 weeks contemplating at this tree and trying to decide whether or not he's going to share his teachings with the world. Because the teachings that he has to share are vastly different than what's being shared in the world at that time. At that time, people were hanging themselves upside down from trees. They were laying on beds of nails. They were piercing their body with metal implements. They were starving themselves. And there were plenty of people that were claiming that their teachings were leading to enlightenment. And Siddhartha Gotama knew that it wasn't those teachings that led to enlightenment, because he had discovered what it took to get to enlightenment. So he contemplated for 7 weeks. Do I go teach the teachings and help people to understand what I've discovered? Or do I go back to the palace? Well, we know the result of his contemplation is that he ultimately decided to share his teachings. So this is why people oftentimes attribute this particular tree to where the Buddha attained enlightenment, where in reality, he attained enlightenment over a 6-year period, and he just contemplated at this tree for 7 weeks before he went off and actually decided to share his teachings. So when he finally decided he was going to share his teachings, he went back to the area where he was originally learning with those first 2 teachers. And as he was walking into that area, he encounters 4 of his previous classmates and 1 of his previous teachers, these first 5 people. And when these 5 people see him coming, they start laughing at him. They start joking him. They start mocking him because they see all this meat on his bones and they think he's given up. Because to them, to get to enlightenment, you had to starve yourself. You shouldn't have meat on your bones if you're trying to get to enlightenment. So when they saw him walking towards them and he looked so healthy and so bright and so radiant, they thought he had given up on getting to enlightenment, because they thought you had to essentially disparage the human body. But they saw this healthy figure coming towards them. So they start laughing him, joking him, mocking him, ridiculing him. But by the time you get to enlightenment, none of that stuff is going to affect you. Your mind is unshakable. It doesn't matter what somebody says. You're not going to be upset when somebody's ridiculing you and joking you and mocking you. So what the Buddha ends up doing is he comes over to where they're at and he sits down and he takes his hand and he touches the earth. And this is the one and only miracle that he performed. He touches the earth. And when he touches the earth, these animals come to where he's at. And these animals, like squirrels and rabbits and deers and lizards and snakes and birds, they all come to where he's at. And these 5 people see what he's done, and they sit down and they decide to listen to him and listen to what he has to say. And he delivers his very first teaching. It's called the Four Noble Truths. I'm going to teach this to you tomorrow. In the Four Noble Truths, he explains the problem in the unenlightened mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of the problem, and the path forward to completely fixing the problem. So in 4 simple statements, he teaches in such a way that you can independently verify what it is that he's sharing. So when I teach you tomorrow the Four Noble Truths, you're going to be able to understand the problem in your mind. You're going to understand the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward of how to fix it. And you can independently verify it for yourself the way that I teach it to you. You'll be able to see, why is your mind angry? Why are you frustrated? Why are you upset? Why are you angry? Why are you annoyed? Why are you irritable? All those discontent feelings, typically in the unenlightened state, you're going to blame them on other people. Typically, you might think that other people are causing you to be angry. But what you're going to learn tomorrow and be able to independently verify is how your mind is causing these feelings itself. And that's why you can experience freedom from those feelings. You can get liberated from them because you can train your mind to eliminate those feelings. But you wouldn't be able to train your mind if you didn't understand what was causing those feelings. So I'm going to explain it to you tomorrow in a way that you can understand. This is his very first teaching called the Four Noble Truths. So these first 5 students learn these Four Noble Truths, and they can independently verify for themselves that he has discovered what it took to get to enlightenment. So now they become his first 5 students. They learn and grow. His community of students grows and grows and grows and grows. More and more people are getting to enlightenment. And by the time he dies at the age of 80, he had been teaching for 45 years. From the age of 35 until the age of 80, he teaches countless people. And countless people get to enlightenment. And they know that that they're getting to enlightenment because their mind is peaceful and it's joyful. They no longer experience any irritability or anger or frustration or any of those other discontent feelings. And we captured his teachings today in what we refer to as the Pali Canon. These are the original source teachings of the Buddha. And you can learn those words and you can practice them and see that they work for yourself. That his teachings are timeless because he's describing these natural laws, and these natural laws haven't changed from his lifetime until now. So his teaching career spans that 45 years, and countless people get to enlightenment, and then his teachings are preserved in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after his death. But it was this sickness, aging, and death that was the real motivators to him going on this journey to enlightenment. That he wanted to understand that. He needed to understand why people experience these things. Why are they so disgruntled? Why are they so angry? Why are they so frustrated during this period of time? And he himself, prior to enlightenment, was experiencing those same feelings. And what he discovers is that the human mind is craving permanence. That it wants things to be permanent. That when you're sick and you're feeling disgruntled and angry and irritable, it's because you're craving to be permanently healthy. And this body can't be permanently healthy. It's not possible. Or when you're experiencing aging, if you're disgruntled or irritated because of the aches and pains in the body, this is the mind craving permanent youthfulness. Or when somebody dies, or if you're nearing death and you're disgruntled or irritated or sorrowful, this is the mind craving permanent existence. And he discovers that everything around the world is impermanent. That you live in this impermanent world, but yet the mind is craving for things to be permanent. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets excited, it gets happy, it gets pleasurable feelings. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. So if the mind's craving permanent youthfulness or craving permanent health or craving permanent life, when you're experiencing this impermanence, you're going to be very frustrated and agitated and annoyed. So we'll go into more detail on this tomorrow, but this is the crux of what he discovers, is that the mind is causing itself to be discontent. And you can learn about this and you can independently verify it, and then you can apply the tools and techniques that he discovered to uproot the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings in the mind, to be able to get to the peace and the joy. So this is what I have to share with you to this level of detail on the life story of the Buddha. The way that I teach is I teach to a certain level of detail, and then as students ask questions, I go deeper down into it. So if you guys have questions, you can let me know. Do you guys have questions here at the temple, or anybody online have questions? Junko, yeah, if you could get a microphone. By the way, for those of you guys here at the temple, these air conditionings, if you guys would like to adjust the temperatures at all, there's remote controls on the bookshelf over there. Or if you'd like to adjust the fan, also there's remote controls over there. Feel free to adjust it however you like, because there's an air conditioning unit right here blowing down on me, and I have a remote that I just kind of adjust this one. But if you guys would like to adjust it either hotter or colder, you can use the remotes back there and adjust it for yourself. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. So it's really curious. So knowing the background of the Buddha, so since he was born, and then to get enlightenment, and then so my question is about a monk. So now, especially in Thailand, the monk is very respected. And then I wonder in those days, the Buddha is kind of 30s, so he started to get enlightenment. I wonder the monk is kind of what kind of status in the society, and then so you also described the Buddha encountered the homeless people, and I in my mind the homeless people refers to monk, and so just curious. I like to know.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the way a Buddha thinks, and also the way an enlightened being thinks, which a Buddha and an enlightened being are different things, but a Buddha is enlightened, but they're a unique type of enlightened being. But the way a Buddha and an enlightened being thinks is they don't think about status in society. They don't think about themselves as being high or low. They just think of everybody as being equal. This is part of training the mind to eliminate conceit, that when there's conceit in the mind, which is part of the ego will want to put yourself above people and look down on them, or you might put yourself below people and look up to people in such awe and admiration that your mind is shaken up in those situations. So a Buddha doesn't look at it as they're high in society or they're a certain status. They look at it as they're equal to everybody, and that everybody else is equal too. Where in society, people will put others above or below. Like someone might think the prime minister is above everybody, or the king is above everybody, or maybe someone who sweeps the streets they might think is below everybody. But a Buddha and an enlightened being doesn't think that way. They just think about everybody as being equal. And in terms of homeless, the Buddha was homeless after he left from the palace, right? He entered into this life of homelessness. He does describe this livelihood of being ordained. He describes it as the lowest form of livelihood. Where nowadays, what you see particularly here in Thailand, is the Thai people will put the monks up really high.
Yeah.
And because of this, there's a lot of conceit within the ordained community that when we why to the ordained practitioners, they don't why back. They don't show respect back. This isn't what the Buddha actually taught, but this is what some ordained practitioners choose to do. This is what they choose to practice. And with them choosing to practice that, that's on them, that's their life. I would encourage you, whether you are ordained or unordained, that you respect everybody. But nowadays, we're so far away from the lifetime of the Buddha, people have gotten really far away from his teachings, and people have propped the ordained practitioners up pretty high. And then in some cases, an ordained practitioner might have been taught to not show respect to household practitioners, which isn't what a Buddha would do. And that's not what an enlightened being would do. An enlightened being would show respect to everybody. They wouldn't view themselves as being high or above others. So in terms of homelessness, the Buddha would have come in contact with people that are homeless, but he himself was homeless. He didn't have one particular place that he considered to be his home. He would move around and stay in different places.
Thank you. So Buddha is walking around. So he found the kind of teacher. So he learned a lot from someone. So who had who had something to teach to Buddha. But after that, he entered jungle or forest by himself. But so far, and before going to jungle by himself, so Buddha had a teacher, and then so I wonder who teach him, homeless people. Or?
There were two teachers who taught him, and their name is in the Pali Canon, the name of those teachers. We have very little about what was taught to him because what was shared with him didn't actually lead to enlightenment. So a Buddha, one of the first criteria of becoming a Buddha is that you don't have any teachers or any guides that were helping you to get to enlightenment. So even though we had two teachers initially, it was those teachings did not lead to enlightenment. It was what he discovered on his own during that 4-year period that actually led to his enlightenment. So we have their name in the Pali Canon, and we have a little bit about what they were actually teaching him, but not much because the teachings didn't actually work to get to enlightenment, so nobody preserved them.
Okay, thank you so much. Buddha didn't hesitate to ask to those people who are homeless. So they might monk, they might not monk. So
they might what?
They might not monk. They might monk. A lot of homeless.
So the people that give up worldly life and enter into homelessness to be able to get to enlightenment, that's one aspect of what somebody could do to get to enlightenment. You don't have to do that in order to get to enlightenment. They refer to them during the lifetime of the Buddha as an ascetic. This is someone who's given up worldly life and going on this journey to enlightenment is referred to as an ascetic.
Wow.
Nowadays, we would probably refer to them as a monk or an ordained practitioner. Or during the lifetime of the Buddha, he would refer to them as bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, his students, right? So you don't have to give up your worldly possessions in order to get to enlightenment. You can get to enlightenment as a household practitioner, but the Buddha did do that as his part of his journey to enlightenment, and he taught the ordained path. But he also taught household practitioners too. And as a household practitioner, you can get to enlightenment. You just need to understand how to do it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Interesting. Thank you.
Okay, let me see if we have any other questions here. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions here. So it's 10 minutes after 10. And what I usually do here is take a nice little break, give you guys a chance to talk, get to meet each other, use the bathroom. If you'd like to get a snack or some water, you're welcome to do that. If you go out the front gate of the temple and you turn right, down at the end of the street, there's a 7-Eleven. There's lots of restaurants and shops and things like that. But sometimes people are looking for, kind of a snack. So they'll go to the 7-Eleven. So there's one right down the street. Again, there's the bathroom. There's the tables outside the classroom, which kind of serves like a student lounge a little bit. So feel free to spend time with each other. That's one of the benefits of coming to a class like this is you get to meet other people and build relationships. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start class back up at 10:30, which will be 20 minutes from now. Okay, so we'll be starting back at 10:30. Thank you guys for being here again. Welcome to everyone here at the temple and those of you guys online, and look forward to sharing the teachings of the Buddha with you over the coming week. Okay, so be well and enjoy your break. Take care. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.